rewards for a trusted deposit.
A very good evening to all our viewers. You're watching Primetime News on TV1. For the News First team, I'm Yuki Pasha. Before we head into stories in detail, let's start off with a look at tonight's headlines.
Curfew to be enforced strictly from tonight. Police warn of opening fire. Police delivers special announcement to Gota Gogama protesters. Triforces personnel called in to preserve law and order. US concerned over the deployment of the military in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka's economy in peril. Central Bank governor hints at resigning if political instability continues. President must resign to regain political stability. Opposition says. Negombo residents prevent attempt to stir racism.
Starting off with your top story tonight, the nationwide curfew will be lifted at 7 a.m. tomorrow, the 12th of May, and will be reimposed at 2 p.m. on the same day. Thereafter, it will be in effect until 6 a.m. on Friday, the 13th of February. The President's Media Division says no one is permitted to stay in public places or outside without a written permit issued by an authorizing officer. Moving on, the Ministry of Defence has instructed security forces to use the necessary force, including shooting, required to prevent violent groups from stopping vehicles and conducting inspections, causing damages to public or private properties, looting and assaulting. Now, earlier, the Police Media Division said Police Headquarters has instructed all police stations to use legally permitted force, including shooting when necessary, to prevent acts of violence.
In a statement, the police headquarters said it would take maximum measures to prevent rioters from stopping vehicles and attempting to cause damage or robbery, as well as damage to public or private property, robbery or loss of life, or serious assault. The police said that the curfew will be strictly enforced tonight. The police has also cautioned social media users to be careful when sharing content, as it could have a drastic impact among the people.
The Army Commander and Chief of Defence Staff General Shavendra Silva says Triforces have been deployed to ensure public security.
Army officers were seen patrolling the streets of Colombo this morning. Triforces personnel were stationed at entry points to the capital. Roadblocks and checkpoints were set up in some areas. Our correspondents reported that military personnel were seen inspecting vehicles in the suburbs of the capital. Similar security arrangements had been made outside Colombo as well.
Why should the people be afraid? There is no need for them to be afraid of the army if they don't do anything wrong. If they are doing something wrong, then they have to be afraid. When there is a curfew in the country, we are requesting the people to remain in their homes. Only workers in essential sectors have been permitted to travel. Therefore, a person who is at home doesn't have to be afraid of army officers who patrol the streets if they're not doing anything wrong. No, there is a constitution. The army acts according to the constitution. How can the army rule the country when there is a president? There is no need for a military rule. The president is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. What is there for the military to capture power?
The US has expressed concern over the deployment of the military in Sri Lanka.
Well, we're concerned by the deployment of the military. We stress that peaceful protesters should never be subject to violence or intimidation, whether that's on the part of a military force or a civilian unit. More broadly, we're deeply concerned by reports of escalating violence in Sri Lanka over the past few days. We condemn, as I said before, violence against peaceful protesters. We call for a full investigation, arrest and prosecution of anyone instigating and involved in acts of violence. We are, as I said before, also closely monitoring the deployment of troops, something that is of concern to us, and we're also closely following political developments in the situation on the ground in Sri Lanka after the resignation of the Prime Minister. We urge the government and political leaders to work quickly to ensure public safety and work together to identify and implement solutions to achieve long-term economic and political stability in Sri Lanka. The government must address the Sri Lankan people's discontent over the economic crisis, including power, food, and medicine shortages, as well as their concerns about the political future of their country.
His Holiness Pope Francis has appealed for the people of Sri Lanka to make their voices heard in a peaceful way and for political leaders to heed their demands.
The Vatican News reported that amidst the social unrest, Pope Francis turned his thoughts to Sri Lanka while speaking at yesterday's general audience.
I address a special thought to the people of Sri Lanka, especially the young who in recent times have made their voices heard in the face of the challenges and the social and economic problems of the country. I join with religious leaders in urging all sides involved to maintain a peaceful approach without giving in to violence. I appeal to all those with responsibility to listen to the aspirations of the people, guaranteeing the full respect of human rights and civil liberties. Defense Secretary Retired General Kamal Gunratne says military officers will act on the instructions of the President in his capacity as Defense Minister. So far, 136 properties had been set on fire and completely destroyed. 61 vehicles had been damaged. 41 vehicles were torched. 219 people were injured in the violence. 9 people have died, including 2 police officers. Instructions were issued yesterday to take necessary action. The Triforces and the police won't hesitate to take necessary action based on the directives we have received. The President is giving us the required instructions. We will act upon the instructions that he issues as the Defense Minister. The curfew will remain in effect until 6 a.m. tomorrow. We hope there won't be any more trouble. We will take the necessary action if there is any issue. I think we should be able to lift the curfew tomorrow morning. Sometimes it would be lifted and reimposed for another period. When about 1,000 people come and commit such acts, what can 4 or 5 police officers do? Now the police and the army have been granted the necessary powers to take action. That is false. There will never be a military rule in Sri Lanka. An attempt to establish a military rule was only made once in the 1960s or 1970s. The plan was plotted by the first, second and third in command, but it didn't materialize. I remember either the second or third in command had passed information. Therefore, it's very difficult for something like that to be done in this country. Don't worry, there will never be a military rule in Sri Lanka. I say this with responsibility. I am sorry to say this, but the military does not have such intentions.
Journalists
question the Defence Secretary on the whereabouts of former Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa.
Prime Minister, he was evacuated to Trinco Naval Dockyard and he's there. And within a couple of days' time, when the things are normalized, he will be given with adequate security because he is entitled for that, being a former president, and he will be taken to the whatever the place as per his consent.
Also, would you like to clear in terms of there were several videos circulating on social media which we of course did see the police over here rather than firing in the air, the first thing that we could of course see was targeting especially various people, the civilians here, right at the chest level. Would you like to clarify something on that?
We don't fire at civilians. Okay. We start with warning shots. Warning shots mean you have the weapon, rounds are inside, we aim at the sky and release one or two shots. If the mob is more violent and their intention is a malicious intention of killing our own fellow citizens, then even with that police will try their level best. I underline the word, try their level best to shoot couple of shots below the knee level. So that is the procedure here. Unfortunately, if it hits the stomach or something, right, because every policeman is not a marksman.
The secretaries to the Defence, Public Securities and Finance Ministries were appointed under the powers vested with the President. The President's media division said the secretaries who were serving until very recently were reappointed to their positions. But the Young Lawyers Association says the Cabinet Ministries and Ministry Secretaries ceased to function as the Prime Minister has resigned.
The President has appointed a Defence Secretary and 2 other Ministry Secretaries. These are illegal appointments that he has made using powers that he doesn't hold. Before appointing a Defence Secretary, according to the Constitution, the President must decide on the ministries and functions. A gazette must be published on that. The Ministry Secretaries must be appointed only after that. Those appointments go against the Constitution. He has no powers to make such appointments that go against the Constitution or issue instructions to such secretaries.
The Defence Secretary commented on this today.
I have been given these responsibilities once the Cabinet has been dissolved. There is nothing to hide. I have the legal powers to make decisions. As the Defence Secretary, I have been given those powers according to Sri Lanka's constitution.
Moving on, protests at Negombo opposite the President's office in Colombo had been running peacefully for the past 32 days. Newsfirst's Rochelle Tumodar brings us the latest from the location.
For the 33rd consecutive day, the protest in Galway continues, and the strong and tough protesters still continue to demand for their rights. There are 2 significant things happening. We saw that there was a lawyers' media conference happening, and right now a press is also being conducted by the protesters here in Galway. Now, this is the current state of Occupy Galway's protest. The police fixed loudspeakers on the building of the President's office in Colombo to deliver a message to the protesters at the Gotagogama protest site. They informed protesters that violating the curfew is an offence.
මේ ශ්‍රී ලංකා පොලිසිය මගින් නිකුත් කරන ලබන නිවේදනයයි මහජන ආරක්ෂක පනතේ දෙවන වගන්තිය ප්‍රකාරව මැයි මාස 6 වන දින මධ්‍යම රාත්‍රියේ සිට දිවයින පුරා හදිසි නීතිය ක්‍රියාත්මක කර ඇති අතර තවද මැයි මාස 9 වනදා සිට හෙට උදෑසන 7 දක්වා ඇඳින් නීතියද පනවා ඇත. එසේහින් බලය දෙනු ලබන නිලධාරියෙකු විසින් ප්‍රදානය කරන ලද ලිඛිත අවසර පත්‍රයක අධිකාරී යටතේ මිස පොදු මාර්ගයක, දුම්රිය මාර්ගයක, පොදු උද්‍යානයක, පොදු ක්‍රීඩා භූමියක හෝ වෙනත් පොදු භූමියක හෝ එම ප්‍රදේශවල මුහුදු වෙරළේ සැදී සිටීමට කිසිවෙකුට අවසර නැත. එබැවින් ඇඳිරි නීති කොන්දේසි උල්ලංඝනය කරමින් කටයුතු කිරීම පවත්නා නීතියට අනුව වරදා බව ඔබ සැමට මෙයින් දැනුම් දෙමි.
For 33 days, protests have been taking place at Gotagogama, a township set up by the people against the government. Demonstrations continued today as well, demanding President Gotabaya Rajapaksa to resign.
මොනම හේතුවකට අපි මේ සාමගාමී අර්ථය නවත්තන්න නෑමයි මයිනා ගෙදර යවුවා වගේම ගෝඨාභයත් ගෙදර යවලයි මේක ඉවත් කරන්න කියන එක ඔයගොල්ලන්ට දැනුවත් කරන්න අපි කැමැති. ගෝඨාභය රාජපක්ෂ අපි ගෙදර යවලම තමයි මේක නවත්තන්නේ. අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම මේ සිස්ටම් එක වෙනස් කරලම තමයි නවත්තන්නේ. මේක පාස්සේ කාර්යයක් මේක මේ විදිහටම අපි කරගෙන යමු. දින දවස් වල වැඩි ඈතක නෑ. අපි මේ අරගෙන හැම දෙයක්ම දිනනවාමයි. අපි දිනවන්නේ
I am requesting for Mahinda Rajapaksha to be brought under the law. There were innocent youth here. I had met with them. They never entertained violence. They always campaigned on love and peace. Those who allowed this unrest to erupt must be brought before the law.
මේ ප්‍රශ්නය ඇති කරන්න ඉඩ දුන්න කට්ටියව නීතිය ඉදිරියට ගේන්න ඕනේ.
Several events took place at the protest site throughout the day. A newly married couple made their way to the protest site to add their voice to the demonstrations. People were seen donating food and water and other supplies to the protest site that was vandalized in this week's arrest. The army commander says there is no intention to disrupt peaceful protests.
We never remove protesters from Gotagogama. We have no issue with the people who are acting peacefully. There won't be an issue as long as there is peace.
Army Commander and Chief of Defence Staff General Shavindra Silva and Inspector General of Police C.D. Vikramaratne was summoned to the Human Rights Commission today. The Human Rights Commission of Sri Lanka had summoned them to inquire into the attacks on peaceful protests and the sequence of incidents that followed.
The IGP had called the army to intervene on the 9th. The incident had already happened by then. The army was called in to restore stability. We had nothing to do with this. They summoned me to make some inquiries about the army's activities. We weren't connected.
Chairperson of the Human Rights Commission, retired Supreme Court Judge Rohini Marasinghe said Senior DIG of the Western Province Deshabandhu Tennakun will be summoned on Friday. In a statement, the Commission said all law enforcement agencies did not work in cooperation to preserve the rule of law and that there were shortcomings in the intelligence services as well. 2 men have been arrested over suspicion of being involved in the attack on the senior DIG of the Western Province, Deshabandhu Tennakun, yesterday. The Colombo Magistrates Court ordered the suspects to be remanded until they are produced for an identification parade tomorrow. The Kolpiti police arrested the suspects and produced them before Colombo Additional Magistrate Shilini Pereira today. Police informed the court that another suspect arrested in connection to the incident is receiving treatment at the Colombo National Hospital. The Additional Magistrate will issue an order after examining the suspect.
The Defence Secretary says legal action will be taken against those who attacked peaceful protesters at Golface. All these incidents erupted after the unrest that broke out at Golface. The Public Security Ministry and the police have begun investigations. We will take legal action against those who stirred this. A few politicians had arrived at Golface soon after the violence erupted. Even opposition leader Sajid Premadasa came there. He might have seen how he was attacked. He might have gone there to try and calm things down. Other politicians went there as well, but they didn't face any issues. There might be a hidden meaning behind this. The police will conduct a full-scale investigation and use the available footage to produce those responsible before the law.
Venerable Omalpe Sobita Thera filed a complaint with the police today. Those organized groups of thugs emerged from the Prime Minister's official residence. We have learnt that thousands from many parts of the country were brought here and were given food, liquor, money and then sent to carry out the attack with poles. The terrorism stemming out of temple trees was the root cause for all acts of terrorism and violence. Therefore, we filed a complaint with the police headquarters and the IGP to arrest the leaders who formed these terrorist groups at temple trees. It is very clear that terrorist leaders like former Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa and Johnston Fernando manipulated these groups that acted as slaves. Law enforcement officers don't have the right or duty to protect criminals who incite terrorism and then cause it to spread in the country. The Colombo High Court Bar Association cited delays in arresting those who attacked peaceful protesters opposite temple trees and the President's office. Individuals carrying sticks and iron rods were seen among those who broke out of temple trees after being provoked by politicians. It is clear that it was a premeditated and well-planned attack. Accordingly, the law can be enforced against them for being part of an illegal assembly. The police had the opportunity to prevent this attack, but did they try their best to prevent it? There is a suspicion as to whether they allowed the group to carry out the attack and respond later. Our association says that all those responsible for the attack must be arrested. The law must be enforced against them. The Attorney General has given his advice. The IGP should bring those responsible to justice. Violence erupted in the country due to the first incident. So, those who organized the first attack should be held responsible for the subsequent attacks. Do not spread violence anymore. Don't damage human life or property. Everyone involved must bear responsibility. Remember that they will be produced in court. I urge you to avoid violence. We are ready to file individual complaints against them. At Gota Gogama, we are identifying those who are involved, collecting evidence and even obtaining affidavits. We hope to begin the legal process on Friday. There is a law in this country. Trust that law. If violence continues, organized groups that are unknown to us will get involved and then pin the blame on the people. That will lead to instability. The Prime Minister has resigned and the country does not have a government. If a country runs like this, there would be disorder. Therefore, we respectfully request you to immediately stop violence.
The people of Negombo united to defeat attempts to stir racism in their neighborhood yesterday. A group had attempted to evoke racist sentiments, citing the incident in which a hotel was set on fire in Negombo. They had created a dispute in the area and caused damage to the hotel, vehicles and shops nearby. Religious leaders intervened to control angry crowds, while residents united to completely defeat any attempt to stir racism.
जाति भेद प्रश्न අපිට නැහැ අපිට ලැජ්ජා ඇත්තට මොකද්ද මේ කරන්නේ මේගොල්ලෝ අපි මුස්ලිම් සිංහල ඔක්කොම එකට ඉන්නේ අපි මිනිස්සු එකතු වෙන්න ඕන මේක පාතාලේ ප්‍රශ්න මේගොල්ලෝ මේ දේශපාලනයක් කරන්න යන්නේ මෙතන ඒකයි හරිද අපි අපේ ಜಾති ප්‍රශ්න අපිට නැහැ අපි මේ ඔක්කොම ඉන්න ಜಾති ඔක්කොම එකට ඉන්න ගමන් හරි ෆාදර් නෑ හරි අපි යන්නේ හැබැයි මේ දෙන්න දෙන්න අපි ඔක්කොම Muslim devil ඔක්කොම එකට ඉන්න ගමේ මේ දේශපාලන බත්පැකට් කරන සක්‍රිය එනවා.
The army was deployed to bring the situation under control last night.
The Malbima Suraksha Ekamutu Association commented on the incident in Negombo.
Yesterday, people affiliated with the Sri Lanka Podujana Perumana had attempted to stir unrest among communities in Negombo yesterday. The name of a member in the Katana Pradesh Sabha had also emerged. We will file a complaint against this. The SLPP group attempted to create tensions between Muslims and Buddhists in Negombo. However, due to the intervention of the Catholic priests and other religious leaders, the situation was brought under control. We came here to complain about the thugs and politicians who were involved in this and to obtain compensation from them for the damages that they had caused yesterday.
Shouldn't the people of Negombo, along with civil society and religious leaders, receive the nation's respect for preventing the destruction that opportunistic groups plan to create using racism?
The remains of Amarakirithiyatha Korala, a Sri Lanka Podujana Perumuna parliamentarian who was killed during the unrest in Nitambua, were laid for public respects at his house in Polonnaruwa. Amarakirithiyatha Korala began his political career at the North Central Provincial Council and was elected to Parliament in 2020. The father of one was 58 years old at the time of his death. His final rites will be held tomorrow at the public cemetery in Polonnaruwa. The final rites of 27-year-old Harshana Dishan, who was killed in the unrest in Mirigama, were held at the Hapadigama Public Cemetery today. The remains of Imaduwa Pradesh Sabha Chairman Sarath Kumara, who had died after being attacked at his house, were brought to his residence in Dikkumara in Gaul. Sarath Kumara was a 69-year-old father of two. His final rites will be held tomorrow. The remains of Pradeep Priyantha Kumara, who died during an attack on a hotel in Negombo, were moved to his residence in Minuwangoda. The 30-year-old was serving at the Navy camp in Valisara. Pradeep Priyantha Kumara's final rites will be held at the Yatiyana Public Cemetery tomorrow.
University lecturers had this to say at a media briefing today.
Gotabaya Rajapaksa must be sent away immediately. Militarization has increased. There are army officers along the streets. The emergency law is being used in the country. The Rajapaksas have created a situation where we can't go to the international bodies such as the International Monetary Fund to seek for assistance. Therefore, we have a massive challenge of creating a transitional government and helping the country out in this darkness.
We know the former Prime Minister left after setting the entire country on fire. That was how the elder brother left. The younger brother is dragged into the country to a point where he will set what is remaining on fire and then leave. If he doesn't leave now, no one will be able to prevent this country from becoming a pit of fire.
Mahinda Rajapaksa didn't resign. The people chased him away. He had to resign because of the people. The president must tell the people when he would resign. This case has been heard in the people's court. The people have delivered their verdict that the Rajapaksas should no longer be on this land. Before shooting at the people, you must protect the lives of the people.
Subramaniam Swamy had yesterday tweeted that the Indian army must be sent to Sri Lanka to protect democracy. The Rajapaksas are trying to retain control of the country using international interference as an excuse. They are resorting to despicable ways as their last option.
The Joint Chambers, together with the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka, has urged the President to respect the voice of the public and resign immediately after the interim government is firmly in place. The Chambers calls upon the President to take immediate steps to appoint a competent person as the interim Prime Minister and a small cabinet of ministers in consultation with the Prime Minister acceptable to all leading political parties represented in Parliament. The Joint Chambers statement noted, quote, "It is abundantly clear that concluding the IMF staff level agreement agreement in a timely manner as planned could be jeopardized due to the absence of a legitimate government, end quote. It noted that while awaiting the IMF program, it is critical that Sri Lanka secures bridge financing to help get through the next 6 months. Meanwhile, the National Christian Council of Sri Lanka has called upon the president to step down from his position. In a statement, the NCCSL said, quote, "We welcome the resignation of the Prime Minister and call upon the president to follow suit. We call for the establishment of an interim government with the participation of respected and untainted political leaders and committed professionals to initiate the process of addressing the unprecedented economic and political crisis of our country," end quote.
The Indian High Commission in Colombo said it denies reports on sending Indian troops to Sri Lanka. The High Commission said these reports and such views are also not in keeping with the position of the Government of India. The statement further noted that India is fully supportive of Sri Lanka's democracy, stability and economic recovery. The Chinese embassy in Sri Lanka says China is closely monitoring the developments of the situation in Sri Lanka. Quoting the Foreign Ministry of China, the Chinese embassy tweeted, quote, "We believe that with the joint efforts of all sectors of Sri Lanka, the country will regain peace and stability as soon as possible," unquote. The European Union and its 27 member states are closely monitoring the developments in Sri Lanka. Issuing a statement, it said the EU condemns the recent vicious attack against peaceful protesters in Colombo, which triggered further violence after a month of peaceful demonstrations had shown, despite some isolated incidents, that Sri Lankans are able to peacefully exercise their right to freedom of expression. The EU deplores the loss of life, including of a member of parliament, and the high number of injured people. The European Union has called on the authorities to initiate an investigation into the events and to hold accountable those instigating or perpetrating violence. The EU has also urged all parties to refrain from violence and to show restraint. UK Foreign Minister and Minister for Women Marise Payne tweeted saying, quote, "UK reiterates calls for democratic principles and protection to be observed in Sri Lanka and encourage restraint on all sides," unquote.
Let's now toss over to a short commercial break. Do stay with News First. We will be right back.
යස ඉසුරු පිරුණු තැනක් නෙමේක ලොකුම සල්ලි තියෙන තැන අපේ සල්ලිත් පරිස්සම් නිසා
ඉහළ ප්‍රතිලාභ සමගින් විශ්වාසනීය තැන්පතුවක්
LB Yasa Isuru, unparalleled rewards for a trusted deposit.
Welcome back to the news. Sri Lanka's dire economic status has worsened amidst severe political instability. Against such a backdrop, a group of doctors warned of a severe shortage of pharmaceuticals and medical equipment at hospitals.
Incidents of patients losing their lives as a result of a shortage of essential medicines and equipment have been reported from several hospitals. Equipment used to carry out blood gas analysis and other equipment are in short supply. Even common drugs such as dextrose is unavailable. That has resulted in the death of many patients. This is a serious situation.
We cannot see a clear vision to get out of this crisis. We don't feel the leaders understand the queues, the shortages and exorbitant prices of food. Politicians must understand the suffering of the people. They seem to be working to further their own agendas instead of seeking solutions.
The shortage of fuel has continued to affect the people in the country. Today, the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation resumed the sale of fuel that was suspended island-wide. The CPC said that it had suspended the sale of fuel due to the curfew and the current security situation in the country. It added that fuel is being distributed to selected areas. The CPC said fuel will be distributed under police protection only for essential services. It said there are enough fuel stocks in storage facilities at present. The CPC added that 3 more fuel tankers will reach Sri Lanka by next week. However, many Sipetco and Lanka IOC filling stations remained closed today.
Central Bank Governor Dr. Nandalal Weerasinghe raised concerns over Sri Lanka's economic position at a media briefing today. There is only a limited amount of reserves. The reserves that we have in our country is not even enough to fund our imports for next week. It is at a time like this that we are trying to introduce new measures and bring in foreign currency to the central bank or the market. If this continues, there will be power cuts up to 10 or 12 hours. The country doesn't have enough money to import fuel. There was an era where there were power cuts for 12 or 13 hours and when there were long queues. It seems we are heading in that direction again. Don't try to import non-essential items. That can be done later. You will be doing a favor by making that decision. We request the exporters to remit their earnings into the banking system and provide their support to restore the situation in the country. The request we have for expatriate workers is to send money to their families through banks instead of sending them through the black market. The central bank governor said he would step down if political stability is not achieved in the next 2 weeks. We are facing a situation where there is an issue in maintaining law and order. Several unacceptable things have happened. While condemning the unlawful attacks on peaceful protesters, I wish to say that we can't restore economic stability in the country when there are groups that set fire to homes, kill people and take the law into their hands. It's a daunting task. If incidents like this take place when we are trying hard, if there is no law and order and if there is violence, it wouldn't help us in overcoming the crisis. The second point is political stability. If the economy is to be rebuilt, we need political stability. Now we are in an inefficient position without a prime minister and a finance minister, and one in which parliament doesn't do much. There is only an executive president running the country. At a time like this, as an authority tasked with managing the economy, we have a request for the responsible stakeholders, including the 225 elected representatives and the executive president. Their main responsibility is to establish a stable governance structure that can restore stability in the country and a system in which law and order can be maintained in a much better way. The central bank is not in a position to explain how it should be done, but we need a governance structure like this. I have said that when I took office, even the unrest at Mirihana had not occurred. The incident in Mirihana was the starting point for political instability in the country. I hope that stability will be restored in a couple of weeks and that we can implement our economic policies successfully. That is why I took office. But a month later, this situation has only aggravated. I have informed all political parties that if they don't achieve political stability, no one, including me, will be able to uplift the country in terms of the economy. In a country where law and order is not maintained properly and where there is political instability, it is difficult for any central bank governor to do that. I had said that if there is no solution in a couple of weeks, I won't be able to continue to remain in this position. That is because my presence here will not make a difference. I or anyone in this position or the central bank can't rebuild this country if there is no political stability.
Still in local news, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa says he will appoint a new Prime Minister this week. The President made these remarks while addressing the nation a short while ago.
I am taking steps to appoint a new government to bring the situation under control and to prevent a state of anarchy and to continue the activities of the government that have been stalled. This week I will appoint a cabinet and a prime minister who commands the confidence of the parliament and the people.
Moving on, former Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe met President Gotabaya Rajapaksa for talks in Colombo today. The meeting had begun at around 6:30 p.m. and is said to have lasted for about an hour. Now, Sri Lanka has found itself in a deep crisis at present. Amidst this situation, are political parties taking steps to restore stability in the country?
Although a party leaders meeting was held on Zoom today, a decision was reached to have the meeting tomorrow. Speaker Mahinda Yapabewardena had instructed to enter the no-confidence motion against the president as an item in the order book. The speaker said he has requested the police chief to increase the protection given for parliamentarians.
What is the stance of the Samik Janabalawege? Why do we need a president who can't protect the lives of parliamentarians and their property? We saw that decisions were made to protect the people and their property only after a 24-hour delay. The lives and properties of Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna parliamentarians had been destroyed during this period. Those in government are saying that he wasn't able to protect their lives and property. Therefore, we are requesting the president to resign to support us in creating a new chapter in this country.
දැන් ඔබතුමා කිව්වට ජනාධිපතිතුමාට අස්වෙන්නේ කියලා අගමැතිවරයෙක් නැතුව කොහොමද අස්වෙන්නේ? එතකොට බාරගන්නේ කවුද? නෑ සජිත් ප්‍රේමදාස මැතිතුමා අගමැතිකම බාර ගන්න සූදානම්.
Sajid Premadasa is ready to become the Prime Minister if the President resigns. The President must resign. He is not accepted among the international community. There is no need to elaborate on that. Anyone knows it. What is the stance of the Jatika Janabalawege?
වර්තමාන ජනාධිපති ගෝඨාභය රාජපක්ෂ වහාම සිය ධූරයෙන් ඉවත් විය යුතුයි.
First, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa must resign from his position immediately. Second, in the absence of a Prime Minister, the Speaker should be the acting President. That is what will happen according to the Constitution. As the government and the composition of the present Parliament no longer represent the people's mandate, and as the people have no confidence in the government, the people won't accept any form of change made by Parliament. Therefore, a new government should be formed in 6 months with a new mandate. An interim government should be established for the time being. We propose 2 recommendations to be implemented until an election is held. The Jatika Jana Balawege is ready to take up the responsibility of taking the country on a new path by ending the current political crisis and anarchy. The Jatika Jana Balawege should be allowed to form an interim government through Parliament. We are ready to accept that responsibility, but we only have a few representatives in Parliament. Therefore, other political parties should support us in forming the interim government. If they do that, the Jatika Jana Balawege will be ready to lead the interim government. However, we should have the support of all other parties for that. If other parties are not willing to form an interim government led by the Jatika Jana Balawege, we will support them from the opposition.
විපක්ෂයේ සිට අපි සහාය දෙනවා.
This is the stance of the Tamil National Alliance.
The President is primarily responsible for the situation in the country today. The whole country has been asking him to step down for over a month now. Instead, he has proclaimed a state of emergency, and the Constitution in Article 155(7) says that when he proclaims a state of emergency, if the next sitting of Parliament is more than 10 days away, he must also make another proclamation convening Parliament, which he has not done. That is why the Speaker has requested the President to convene Parliament on an earlier date, and that must be done. In such a situation, the Parliament can convene even without a Prime Minister. Nevertheless, today, since the Prime Minister has resigned, the whole Cabinet stands dissolved, and all secretaries to ministries have also left their positions. That is a constitutional position. Therefore, the President must immediately appoint a person as Prime Minister and swear in a Cabinet, because otherwise, all powers of governance are with the President at the moment. With the President who has lost legitimacy and whom everyone demands must step down. So our request is that the President must immediately swear in a Prime Minister and Cabinet, and soon thereafter must step down from his position.
The Sri Lanka Freedom Party is holding a different stance on this. If opposition leader Sajith Premadasa takes in charge of the government, the Sri Lanka Freedom Party will be willing to support them. We can't make this country totally unstable. We hope to meet the leaders of 11 parties today to make a decision on this. Many are of the opinion that they won't appoint a Prime Minister unless the President resigns. We are ready to take the leadership on this and work towards that.
If the
President resigns, the country will become unstable. Then there would be no Prime Minister or President. The proposals drafted by the Inter-University Students' Federation to solve the current crisis was published in Colombo today. Politicians, trade union leaders, representatives of civil organizations and other groups were present at the occasion. Similar to ousting Gotabaya Rajapaksa, we need to find ways to recover the money he stole with his aides. As the IUSF, we reiterate that a public commission is required to do so. This commission should not only probe current politicians, but those who were involved in politics in the past, and anyone who intends to enter politics. Only if we do so can we afford to give our citizens free medicine. We need to intervene immediately to change this tax regime. The IMF does not have a magic wand to solve this matter. Austerity measures will be set in place. If the executive presidency is a demon, we must chase away that demon. This is the most opportune moment to do so. As the IUSF, we believe a broad dialogue is required to change the constitution. The constitution says what should be done if the Prime Minister or President resigns. They cannot act like adolescents and remain in power. They must go. Then we will manage the affairs of the state even with a constitution which has many lacunas. All these proposals must then be implemented immediately within any structure that is created. All these proposals can be put into action immediately. We will take to the streets from tomorrow to ensure that these proposals are enacted.
Opposition lawmaker Horin Fernando says he has decided to sit independently in Parliament.
I will sit independently and work with the group that takes charge. Whether I contest for an election or not does not make a difference.
And with that, it's a wrap of Primetime News here on TV1. Take care and good night.